I had a time when I was in real distress when I was like 15, 16 years old. And, when I grew up, my parents were atheists. They were from the Czech Republic, and it was a communist country, so they didn't really have religion. And I was in a really tough situation, and I didn't know how I'd get out of it. So I was laying in bed one night, and I'm asking for help. And an angel just floated out of my closet across the room and floated over the bed and then touched my face. She was beautiful. I've never seen an artistic rendition of an angel that meets that. So it was really extraordinary. But after that, I really got my life together. I felt as though I was saved. And I had no other explanation except, okay, angels exist.
I'm sitting down today with psychic medium Anthony Vatuna. And he was one of the first intuitives that I met that truly resonated with me on a very deep level. I remember our first meeting. I was so blown away. I just could not even process what just happened. We had this one-on-one conversation and session. I left the room like I just couldn't even understand what just went down, but it was so powerful. And this was like 14 years ago. And we've been friends since then, and, still go to him when I have questions and challenges in my personal life. So I am feeling very grateful for his presence in today's podcast. He knows how he has changed my life. So I am just excited to have him be here, answer some questions, and just share some of his own personal stories of how he got into this. I love to understand more. So, Anthony, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your presence.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
I wanted to start today's conversation going a little bit back to before you got into this work. Can you share a little bit of what your life was like before becoming a psychic medium?
Well, it's very interesting because I was a construction guy. And so for me, this was not what I had in mind at all. Um, I had some ideas of spirituality when I was a teenager. I had a time when I was in really real distress when I was like 15, 16 years old. And, when I grew up, my parents were atheists. They were from the Czech Republic, and it was a communist country, so they didn't really have religion. And I was in a really tough situation, and I didn't know how I'd get out of it. So I was laying in bed one night, and I'm asking for help. And an angel just floated out of my closet across the room and floated over the bed and then touched my face. She was beautiful. I've never seen an artistic rendition of an angel that meets that. So it was really extraordinary. But after that, I really got my life together. I felt as though I was saved. And I had no other explanation except, okay, angels exist. So I've always gone by what I've seen and experienced. And I got into meditation, and I would see colors and that sort of thing. But nothing really happened until much, much later, until my daughter was born. And when she was born, she had an injury to her arm. And it was very upsetting for me. And I really bonded with her. Her mother wasn't as present as I would have hoped. And so I took her to a lot of doctors, and she had to have a special surgery done that was not done on anyone that young, and it was an experimental surgery. So again, I'm laying in bed asking for help, and then an angel appeared, a small one this time, and its wings were flapping, and I could feel like the wind coming off of this angel, and slowly the face of this angel turned into the face of my baby. So I knew she would be okay. And she was. I mean, she had the surgery, and she's a young woman now, 24 years old, and she has about 85% use of her arm, and she's great. But at the time, it was a lot of drama and difficulty and upset. And for about a year, I started getting very angry about what happened to her and the situation in my life, and I went to therapy. And the therapist was just absolutely happy to see me, a nice gentleman. And he said, well, we could talk about why you're angry, or I could teach you how to do breathing. And I'm like, well, I don't want to talk about it like any man. I'm like, let's not talk about it. And so he taught me to do the breathing. And we did this 100 breaths. It's called the 100 Breaths to Joy. It's all belly breathing in and out through the mouth. And at the end of it, he said to me, I want you to look at me. It's not staring. It's okay. And when I looked at him, his face started to change into other people. And I'm like, okay, I need some medication. I am in much worse shape than I thought because it was a lot. And then I'm like, oh, there's something more going on here than just me and you. And he's like, yeah. And what I was seeing was his previous incarnations, and he was seeing mine. And so he sent me to someone to really learn to do the breathing. You didn't really have to know what you were upset about. And there was some extra added things to it where you would do toning and you would use sacred sound, the ah sound, to get rid of whatever it is you were carrying. But as a result of that, or as a side effect of that, at night when I would lay down, I would see faces. When I closed my eyes, I would see faces, and I would start to hear names, like first and last names, just as a consequence of the breathing. I was thinking I'm just getting rid of my anger issues. And again, I was a construction guy. So for me, it just wasn't, what was this? And I would go into like chat rooms online. This is sort of like, the internet was not what it is today back then. But I would go into chat rooms and ask people like, what is this? What is this about? I wasn't thinking I was going to be psychic. But they would have sort of practice reading, and I would look at what other people were doing. And then one day I tried it, and I could describe the room somebody was sitting in and what their real name was, even though they were using aliases. So it kind of freaked everyone out, but that's basically how I started. And it was like a hobby. So I would do question readings on eBay just to keep sort of practice. I would just practice. I would sell readings for $1, $2, and it was all email at that time. And so, meanwhile in my life, there were a lot of things that happened. My father passed away. And so that was difficult. And my construction business wasn't doing as well because it was really a business that I was doing with him. So when he passed away, I got such amazing closure because I could still talk to him. I would be driving in the car and he would be sitting next to me like he always sat next to me. Or I would have a dream that I was, holding his hand when I was a little boy and he had these rough hands and I could still feel his hand, like it was just amazing that I would have such closure and I would still get to talk to him that way. And I would say to him, like, why do we talk as if you're not dead? And he's just like, yeah, it's just better that way sometimes. So it was like an interesting thing. But doing this professionally, that didn't come up till much later. And the only job I could find at the time was as an exterminator, which was really a horrific job. It was all of my fears and all of my things wrapped into one. I mean, I used to have like dreams when I was a kid about stuff crawling on me. And so here I am doing this exterminating job. But what I noticed is when I was spraying the side of someone's house with nasty chemicals, the neighbor would come over to me and tell me who's dying and who has cancer, who passed away. And I'm like, why are you talking to me? I'm your neighbor's exterminator. Like, what is this about? So I went and saw the Dalai Lama for 4 days. And I felt like, it was an interesting experience. But he talked about karma and killing things. And after that, I couldn't do the job anymore because I could just feel the death, taste the death of every little thing that I was killing. So I had to quit that job. And I just decided I'm going to put up a website and start doing the readings full time, but only email because I'm very shy. I'm not somebody who's going to get out there and be around people too much. But of course, Spirit had other ideas, pulling me out, saying, oh, you should do phone. And I'm like, well, okay, I'll do phone, but I'm never going to do in person. And then eventually, of course, I got pulled out and did in person. And then I was traveling doing it. it wasn't always mediumship. It was more like questions about life. I would get like past life scenes, but the mediumship would always eventually creep in just by talking to people. And so that would come up often. It would start to be more and more part of the work. But yeah, that's how it started, and it just spread. And really, I'm amazed, and I feel very blessed to have been able to just keep doing this for all these years. Probably 18 years now. So it's been a wonderful journey, and to help people, it's a blessing to be able to help people, bring them some closure and some insight, and to help move them forward if possible. I mean, of course, there's a lot more to it, and nowadays there are a lot more people you can talk to about it. So, back then I didn't know a lot of the things I saw, and I still see things sometimes where I'm not sure what it is. But I go by what I've seen and experienced. I don't necessarily believe in anything because I've been able to see so much. So for me, it's like, oh, I don't believe it. I know it. I'm living it.
You said you saw this angel. Was it like seeing it like inside, or
That
was it
time
like a
was not.
physical
That was like
apparition?
a physical apparition. A lot of the stuff with me has been very visual. Oftentimes I'll see things in a room or faces will pop out of a wall and that kind of thing. But back then, that angel was in the room, floating across the room, hovering over my bed, and then she touched my face, and I'm just like stunned, but not afraid. The angelic presence is so calming. I mean, I just can't imagine anyone being like terrified of an angel. I don't think so. There are other things that appear to be scary that I've seen over the years, but ultimately they're not, but they appear to be scary. Like some of those faces initially were not pleasant faces to see when I first opened up. So it's like, what do you do with that? Who do you talk to about that?
Yeah. Can I ask you about that? Because I've heard a lot of mediums say that as well. They call it the eye people. When you're about to go to bed, you close your eyes and you start seeing a bunch of faces and they come in and out. What do you think that is? Is it just your clairvoyance waking up, or is it like literal people trying to reach out to you?
So this is about being a lit up window in the darkness is what I would call it. So once you are of that vibrational frequency, they find you pretty easy. And if there are people you are going to encounter in the next couple of days or weeks, these spirits know that, and they're going to come around. And also, some are just lost. I did have an experience a couple of times where I would, in a dream during the night, I'd find myself in a place where those same kinds of faces, people would be coming up to me, and I would just know how to escort them to the light. And I'm like, okay, how do I know how to do this? First of all, what is this about? But I would wake up exhausted from that. And I think it's just being this lit up window in the darkness. They're looking for help. They're looking to cross over. They're lost souls who haven't accepted that they're supposed to cross over, or don't know, where to go or how to get about it. But in a lot of times they're trying to get a story across or get a message to their loved ones, not because they're distressed. A lot of it is because they're concerned about their loved one who is suffering in some way.
Have you found that to be true across the board? Like when you're communicating with a spirit communicator, that mostly they're at peace, and then it's more about the person that's over on this side.
They are always at peace, unless they're still here. If they haven't crossed over, there's a little bit of I don't know how I would call it, disturbance with them, but once they've crossed over to the other side, where we see them on the other side, there is always a peacefulness. It's sort of indescribable kind of peace. I mean, we don't get that kind of peace here easily.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of peace there. And now it's to the point where a lot of times they want to show where they are, like point behind them and say, look at how amazing this is. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting, because I could see behind them, and there's these layers and layers of light and huge pillars and staircases. And, it's really an extraordinary thing that they want their loved ones to see where they are, that they're really safe and it's beautiful and all of that.
Wow.
So I
Yeah.
mean, they are trying to bring a comfort, and they will point out people in the family that they're concerned about. And generally, when I'm
Mhm.
reading for people, they will say, "Oh yeah, my, their son or their sister or whoever it is, they're really having a hard time." Like the dead know who's upset, but there's not always a big message either. Especially if someone's already at peace, that's all they want is that they're at peace, and they want to send love across to the family. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. You were saying something when they haven't fully crossed over. What do you mean by that? Is it because they're like
Well,
physically still here, but mentally they're already gone? What do you mean by
Well,
when you
they
say,
don't cross over. I mean, there are ghosts that wander. And so, like, if we were talking about spiritual development, we'll talk about people should turn their lamp down at night so they're not that lit up window in the darkness. Because otherwise, these souls that are wandering here still are going from light to light, feeding upon that to keep themselves sustained. They're looking for their way, but they're also feeding upon each of us who may be in mediumship, doing this work or who might be lit up. So they're still wandering, and that's some of that work. And I'm sure that you do it, and I'm sure that a lot of mediums are doing this without realizing, helping them cross over. Um, I remember initially before I started, so this is when my daughter was really, really young, there was a family member who had committed suicide, and I wasn't doing this as a work. But there was a large crash in my basement, and I was like, what is this noise? And I was gonna, go down there. So I opened the door, cold air comes rushing up. So I'm going down into the basement. This isn't a dream. This is happening. And, I encountered the person, who had died, but they had hung themselves in a basement. So they're in my basement all of a sudden. And I'm like, okay, on the same day, they're looking for a way. They're looking for a light. And I happen to be the only light in the extended family. I mean, this is some cousin, on the other side of the family. And so I,
wait, real quick. So had you already known that he had
that
hung
she,
himself? And
yeah,
then what was he wanting you to relay? Was it
it
just
was to tell something to the family.
okay?
In a case like that, that was like an interesting early thing because suicide comes up quite often
Mm-hmm.
in the work, and they end up where everyone else ends up. There's no purgatory, but there is a shock, especially if it's involving mental illness. It's almost as if the soul is as shocked as everyone else that this happened. And so
Wow.
there's like this sort of searching, where now, what now type of feeling. But at the time, I didn't know anything about what to do with that. It's just like the names that I used to get. I used to compile that list of names, the first and last names. I mean, one day I did get around to Googling these names, and they were all people who were missing or dead or found dead. And I'm like, in America, we're not going to call up the police and say, I know where the bodies are buried because they would show me where they're buried. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? At the time, I mean, now as a professional, I would, but back then, I didn't no idea what to do with that.
Yeah, and there have been police investigations where they used mediums when
Yeah,
they cross,
right.
they come to a dead end in their investigation. They're looking like, can you guys get something? I mean, I don't know if it's
Right.
wildly known, but it's definitely been,
It's definitely something
you know.
that's done, and I've had family members reach out looking for missing people.
Can you share a little bit about that? And
Well, I mean, I wouldn't do it alone. A lot of times, I would reach out to fellow psychics and friends to compile like a report. And some of them I haven't heard anything back from any of them. So
okay,
I don't know if they found them or not.
gotcha.
But I
Because
certainly would do it again if it ever came up. So
yeah, Do you start getting into the realm of like remote viewing? Is that kind of like what happens too? Do you see like the location
If I
or
was going to do, you mean if I were in something like that? Yeah, I feel like that's the way that you would do that, or whatever spirit brought across as a vision, as a scene. You would write all that down and put it into, send it to them. Any little bit would probably help. But to bring people closure, I mean, that is what this is about. It's about that kind of, it's about the work, to bring people closure. Because a lot of times in this, people will reach out and say, well, I want to learn to be a medium, or I want to learn to be psychic. And my first question is always, why? Why do you want to do this? Because it's like a way of life, and it becomes all consuming and about energy management and, protecting yourself and still keeping your sanity.
you first started working, you felt like, okay, I need to do these things? Or was it something that you started bringing together over the course of the years of
Well, I mean,
working?
because I found out that, okay, there are other people online that are practicing doing readings, and answering questions. And so that's what I started out doing, like just question readings on eBay. People would ask, "Oh, is this the right person for me, or am I going to find a job?" And those kinds of questions. Um, but then it kind of escalates, and it becomes very emotional, with people. And then you start to see their trauma, and inevitably you do get into healing work. And a lot of people who are in healing work, they eventually start reading. It goes kind of both ways. Um, But I mean, my mind would resist it. My mind would always resist that, even after I had done 1,000 readings on eBay, and I had like 950 feedback, all saying amazing, incredible. I just can't believe it, and my brain would just say, yeah, this is all bullshit. I don't know what is this?
I'm so glad you brought this up because that was going to be one of my questions. How do you deal with the doubt that comes in when you start doing this work?
I don't know that the mind ever stops doubting that. Like the brain is perpetually resistant to spirituality. And so it will try to erase or deny everything that happens. And it still happens to me, 18 years later, that the mind is like, yeah, you didn't see that. But that happens to people. And I know this is true, that there are relatives, angels, ghosts hanging around, and nobody sees them because their brains are actively obscuring it. It's not that they're not here. It's that it's just being actively obscured by the brain that's in resistance to spirituality. The soul being joyful and peaceful all the time. And that's why the brain is also generating anxiety, fear, depression, to distract from the joyfulness of the soul. So it's sort of there too. But in this work, in our work, it's just denying this because, what would the brain do if it accepted that there is a soul? It would just be relegated to movement and organizational things, and it doesn't want that. So it's working overtime to sort of like deny this all the time. But after a certain amount of time, you become more soul than mind, and your mind doesn't do it as much. It takes a while for the brain to relent and accept it and allow it. And really it's slow for good reason. And if I was seeing like what I see now, if I would have seen that in the beginning, I really would just check myself into a hospital and that'd be it, because it's too much. But so you get used to that over time. And now I can handle seeing so much more than I could have in the first 5 years, let's say.
What kinds of things are you seeing now that would have totally?
Well, now it's way out there because, I'm just not operating just on this planet anymore. So there is the other dimensions and other realms and other planets and species that we're talking about. So that's a lot, that's a lot. But even just to have, even if you just have the dead showing up all the time and getting control over that. And that's why we talk about having a relationship with your spirit guides who can act as a gatekeeper, say one at a time, make it louder, that kind of thing.
tell me a little bit more about your relationship with your spirit guides. How do you grow that over time? Because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people in this field are, or even people who are not mediums, they're
I
curious
would, yeah,
about, like,
I
I
would,
want to know my guides.
right. I would really, recommend developing a relationship with your spirit guides if you want to get into mediumship or into psychic reading at all, because otherwise it's very confusing. If you connect directly with source, how do you decipher all of that? And spirit guides usually, these are earthbound souls or used to be earthbound souls. They understand what it is to be human, and they can act sort of as an interpreter for you. And also in making it louder if you need be, or one at a time. And unless you've had the experience of hearing everything all at once, you don't know how critical that is. I had gotten an apartment that was right next to a cemetery one time. And it was like the only apartment I could find. And I'm like, well, how bad could it be? And I lay down at night and I hear all these voices. I'm like, oh, what have I done? You know, but in that case, it was really me coming to peace with them. And I think that, that's the last place you're going to be disturbed is at a cemetery, which is interesting. Um, but generally, to have your spirit guides work with you, you should talk to them, even though you don't see them, hear them, or feel anything. Keep talking to them. Initially, I was, seeing them nod and shake their head, and then I could hear them. But I don't think that that's so important because they're willing to work with you whatever way they can. They will, place a thought in your head, give you a feeling in your body, have animals in nature acting out in sort of strange ways. I had this thing with sort of like oversized animals appearing, not like as a vision, but actually physically, in what we call the illusion here. They would just appear, and after a while, you start to understand what they are. Like a bird is not just a bird, or if there's two birds or 10 birds, or an oversized squirrel. Like all of these things have meanings in the spirit world, and so your guides will use symbolism in nature oftentimes. We've become a little bit dyslexic to it, like the
Mhm.
clouds are talking to us and we don't even know it. But the guys will work with whatever they can, whatever you're ready for. So you might hear them, you might feel something in your body, but if you don't, it's okay. It's that expectation that screws everything up. So if you have an expectation of hearing, you're not going to. Or like if you meditate and you ask a question of your guides, take the first thing you get, and if you don't get anything, have no reaction whatsoever. And then as you trust, it will get stronger. So, I mean, there are a lot of things you could practice, with your spirit guides without becoming a psychic. Even if you were just in a town that you've never been in before, and you decide to go wandering around, and you ask your spirit guide, should I go right? Should I go left? And any kind of feeling you get in your body, trust it. It will get louder and stronger. What they want is your trust. So a lot of times people are like, tell me the names of my guides, tell me the names. It's such a wonderful opportunity to build trust. You do meditation, you ask for their name, ask who they are, and whatever you get, fully trust it and go with that. And you will be rewarded. They will get louder, they will bring you more signs. If you get a sign you trust, and those are the things. If you're doing reading, you can't be afraid to be wrong. You have to keep going. That first time, if you are wrong, to keep going means so much to your spirit guides. They're trusting anyway, and you get rewarded for that too. So this is about cultivating a relationship with your spirit guides.
That's amazing. Yeah, because that's what gets you. If you allow the no's or the doubt to start to interfere with your relationship with your guides, with your readings, even in your everyday life, if you start second guessing yourself at every turn,
Right.
there's almost like this weird
Yeah.
flow. You are not in the flow.
Oh, that's right. You'll get out of the flow pretty quick. If once you doubt, the whole thing collapses and falls apart, and you basically have to start all over again. So really, doubt isn't the thing, and you can't push. One of the things that we learn is that spiritual energy is not consistent on this planet. it is sometimes the connection is really strong and easy for us to connect to, and other times it's like a old AM radio and you're trying to tune that in. And so, the idea is to, cultivate a high vibrational frequency, your exposure to media, to people, practicing spiritual protection to keep your vibration high. Because on Earth, the energy is always, it's always going up and down. And you want to be as high as you possibly can vibrationally to connect all the time. Because once you can't connect, then you doubt, the whole thing falls apart, and you can't hear your spirit guides. The other thing that happens is your spirit guides don't always stay. When I first started out, I developed a whole relationship with my spirit guide, a whole kind of communication and symbolism. And then one day he disappeared and another spirit guide came. And I felt like someone had died. It was a tragedy for me because it was a lot of work and effort that I put into developing that relationship.
So why do you think that happens? Why would
I
they
think that you're supposed to develop a communication with this first guide, and then another one comes. It turns out that he was still there, and in certain circumstances, he will come forward and help me with something, with a reading or whatever. So, I mean, he still has a purpose, but it's not my main guide anymore. It's a fascinating thing, though, to put the work and the effort in and then not have it. So,
Yeah, I'm sure probably the first few times, like, what's changed? What just happened?
but that's like those opportunities for doubt when you can't connect. For me now at this point, if I'm like a little bit sick and I can't connect, I'm like lost. I'm just like, wow, how does everyone navigate without it? Because I've had it for so long, this sort of solid connection.
And you mean like connect just in
Like just
everyday life, not just when you're doing readings?
not just when I'm doing readings. I mean, for me, I'm comfortable. I can hear the ohm. I can hear the sound of the universe almost all the time. But if I like have the flu or something, it's gone, and I'm like, this is not how I want to live. Like, because I'm so used to having the connection all the time. So
So now when you go out in public, for example, or when you're just hanging out casually with people, do you still get a lot of information
now, and
coming
that was
through?
in the beginning. It was tough because I would get feelings from the people at the next table at a restaurant and that kind of thing. And I've learned to turn it on and off pretty good now. And if I'm off duty, I'm off duty. And a lot of times people are afraid that I'm reading them, and I'm really not. I'm not interested. I have plenty of work to do, and I don't want to read anybody, that I'm not sort of being asked to read in my work. So,
I love it. How do your kids feel about all this? I mean, they grew up watching you do this, so to them it's probably
yeah,
natural,
I
but
mean,
do
I
they
think
have
that they've had
questions?
the funny moments, like at school when they go around and say, "Well, what do your parents do?" And it's like, "Yeah, my dad's a spiritual medium," and it's just like crickets in the room, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's a little bit, I don't know that I think that they've trusted it because I've been doing it so long. I mean, I think that there's some skepticism at times, but I really don't care. Generally, I have no interest in proving anything to anybody at all. Like I haven't done much of that at all. So
Will they ask you for like, okay, dad, I just started dating this guy. What's your
um,
feeling on them?
there's been a little bit of that. There has been a little bit of that. But what's interesting too is like reading people that you're close to is a little bit different than reading for a stranger. I would find it much easier to read for someone I don't know because I have sort of an interest in how they may be. I think I did tell my daughter that she would meet someone, and she did. So it's an interesting thing that I was right about that. So I was like, oh, that's funny. But generally, I can't read for people that I know. Like if the kids were up to something, I wouldn't know. And then a couple days later, I'd be, wait a minute, they weren't at the library like they said. So like you get it like later because we have our own lessons. That's like if you're in a relationship, that's a little bit tricky because they think you might be reading them. And, really we have our own lessons. So it would give you an unfair advantage if you could read them. So I generally don't, but it's important to learn to be off. People in our work, they don't want to shut off. They like to have that nighttime activity and go on all these journeys. But it's important to have downtime and not be connected fully. or not be reading actively all the time, you know?
Yeah, part of the discipline of knowing when to do the work and when to have your human experience, because like you said, everyone has lessons here. It's not
Right, but you
uh
also have more psychic energy. If you take breaks, you'll have more psychic energy when you do have to do the work. And it's an important thing to live in your heart when you do this work, to really have compassion and care, because these are very big, important questions, to do no harm, that kind of thing, and to really be a steward of the work. It's really, really important. That's how it is, to stay fully present in the doing of the work. It's similar to doing healing, but if you're doing healing, you can't be attached to the person getting the healing. I'm not really attached if someone gets the reading or not. I stay in the doing and give everything that I can possibly give to them. And
yes,
that's
because I think that's a big thing for a lot of healers, mediums. There's this feeling of like, did I give enough feeling of responsibility?
there's a danger in that, because you wanting to heal them so badly, you end up taking on more energy than you should. And that's not necessarily healthy. And even just doing the spiritual maintenance, the protection, and severing the cords with people, if you're dealing with someone who has some really heavy things going on, it's important to sever the cords each time, because sometimes there's been where I didn't do the maintenance and I just feel like I'm going uphill with ropes over my shoulders with boulders on the end of them, and I can't do any more work because I'm just like exhausted from it. So doing the maintenance is really important if you're going to go into this type of thing. I do think anybody can do it, but I would say that after I went through the whole journey, the story I told you in the beginning, I did find out later that my relatives in the Czech Republic, they had Googled me and saw what I was doing when I was traveling professionally and all of that. And they're like, oh, his grandfather, whose name is Anthony, used to get messages from the dead. And his grandmother used to have people over the house for readings. Turned out it was in the family, but it wasn't until I went through this whole torturous journey alone that I found that out. So it was much later that I found out that. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
That's usually like, I think before how people figured out that there were mediums because there was like a family thing that gets passed down. My grandma or, my
Right,
aunt Susie used to be a medium.
right.
And now to have the perception that, if you really want to develop your spiritual gifts, that those are open to all of us because we
Yeah.
are souls. We are all souls.
Well, we are supposed to be doing that. I mean, we are here in this classroom to learn lessons, and then if we can, to go a little bit beyond that and recognize all that we are, which is that you are a spirit inhabiting a body that has a mind as a
Yeah.
tool. The mind being there as sort of an interface to this classroom so that we understand it. But if you can move beyond that and have a sense of your soul, that's an amazing thing to have. And even for your own self, if you can have intuition and guidance. And sometimes it could just be a rising energy in the body. That's the yes, and a sinking energy is no. I mean, with yes and no, you could answer pretty much any question in your life. Is this the job? Is this the person? Is this the house? And so much you can do with that. And everybody has that if they would practice it. And that's the thing too, you need practice. That's the big thing, is to get out there if you really wanted to do it and push yourself. A lot easier to read for people you don't know, to push yourself and say, okay, I'm going to put myself there and answer questions and see what happens.
I encountered that when I first started, and I would be like, let me practice. And then I would practice with a complete stranger, and then I would practice with a family member. And it was almost like night and day. The
Yeah.
way the information came through was quite different.
You found
So
it easier? You found it easier with the stranger,
I
or?
found it easier with a stranger because maybe you don't have the emotional attachment. Also, your energy feels more detached from the results. It's
Mhm.
almost like whatever happens, happens. You give
Right.
yourself that permission.
Yeah, but if you're going to practice, I mean, that would be the best way to do it. But it's always a little bit, you don't want to be wrong. That's the whole thing. And if you are, that's the moment of truth. do you keep going? If you do, you will be rewarded for that. So
I love that you said that too, because in the beginning there is that resistance of like, oh, what if I'm wrong? Either because you might hurt someone, by saying something wrong, or because your ego is like, oh, I
well, I
can't.
think to feel like if the crazier it is, the more likely you should say it. You don't want to, but you do, and then you find out, well, that was a good thing I said that, you know.
I hear that all the time. Like, and I love when spirit does that, puts the craziest thing in your mind, and you were like, this can't be right.
Oh yeah.
This just can't
And
be
you don't
right.
want to question. You don't want to say to your spirit guide, should I say it? Should I not say it? That's always the funny thing too, is if people ask a question that they're really not ready to hear the answer to.
Mm.
And it's funny because I will actually hear, Jack Nicholson saying, you can't handle the truth. And I'm like, okay, I can't tell them this. Like, it's like they're asking me something that I'm not supposed to answer. Like I'm just not, they're not ready to hear the full truth of that. This is the symbolism for don't say, which happens to be Jack Nicholson, which is great. But that they often do talk in symbolism. Like in mediumship, sometimes if I don't hear them, they're just acting it out in charades, which is hilarious because I'm really bad at charades. So I'm just like, okay, great. How many syllables? What are you trying to say? They're like acting out a scene. And I'm like, what is this?
Exactly, because so much of this is like how you interpret the information that's being sent, and it's just
Right.
like our minds work very differently too. I would imagine, like, Anthony, if spirit's trying to get something across to you or me at any
That's
given
right.
point, it might have to come in a little bit differently because you've had different life experiences, you have a different,
That's right. Yeah.
dictionary
It's
with
sort of the
spirit.
filter, the filter of the brain. And I get that now a lot of times in dream activity, which are not dreams like just like worry psychological dreams. These are like downloads that I'm supposed to use and take on, as a spiritual download of information. And these dreams, if I interpret them through my brain, they could appear scary or way out there. A lot of times people ask me about dreams, and it's because their brain is saying this is scary, but it's not scary if they could just step out of that. It's the interpretation of that.
Do you have to get into a different frequency? Because I know in your website you have different readings. You have your past life readings.
I should really specialize, shouldn't I? I think.
No, I love that you keep it open because you never know what people want. My question is, you do past life readings, you do psychic readings, you do mediumship. When you're in one of those sessions, do you have to have a different preparation going
Yeah,
into
I
it?
feel like that. If I'm doing a reading and it's just questions about life, I almost feel like that's like one box. And as soon as they say, "Oh, I want to connect with a family member," that's a completely different box to me. It's just in a different place, and I really have to shift gears and say, "Okay, I'm closing that and I'm opening this." But yeah, I do, because I do everything, and the past life stuff is a little bit deep, a little different too. That's different than the questions that people may ask.
How do your past life sessions work? Do you see and then describe what you're seeing to your
Well,
client,
I
or
would I would tell them a few scenes and some lives that they've had, or if it shows me a vision, and I'll describe the vision, things that they had been through in their past lives. I mean, it depends how long the reading is. I usually start there if I'm doing a live reading or if I'm doing a phone reading. I'll start with past lives first if I've never read for them before, and then get into the now and the future.
can you typically gauge how many lives someone has had? I know it's probably hard to have like, oh, you've lived
No,
36
I,
lives.
I, I
But
absolutely can. I absolutely can, and I do that in the past life reading. I can tell people how many lives they've had. I can't say I can say how many lives they've had on Earth, but I can't say how many lives they've had total in other realms and planets and other places where we incarnate, because it's not just here. So, and sometimes there are gaps in the timeline, so I can't say how many thousands of years someone may have been just an earthbound soul. A lot of us here have been incarnating in other places as well. So, and then usually towards the second half of the reading, the dead would come through. So it's sort
God.
of like all of that. But I'll start with the past life. But the past life and even the mediumship, I find those better by email because I'll write like a lot.
Yeah.
was hiding out. I would still hide out if I could.
I know, but your sessions are so powerful in person too. So my first session with you was an in-person
Yeah,
session, and I remember you sitting across from me. You were doing sessions out of a hotel room,
right.
and you started describing the faces of the people that were coming
Yeah,
on like above my own face. And you
right.
were saying like, okay, there was this life where you were blah blah blah, and I was just sitting there like, what the
I'm
hell?
like, yeah, you're growing a beard. What am I doing? Right. I know.
But it was amazing. It
Well,
was
there are
like
some people
crazy.
who have live readings with me. They won't get a phone or email. They only want to see me live. And some people will only do a certain kind of reading with me. So, yeah, the live readings are special. There's a different thing. There's an energy exchange, and that eventually became healing too, because I would see things on people, and I'm like, look, we need to remove that, whatever that is. I need to take that off of you.
How did that start out? Like, so you were sitting across from someone, and then suddenly you were seeing
Yeah,
what?
like I could see like a dark little entity behind the person, and I'm like, there is an entity with you, and they're like, yeah, well, I had spent time in Haiti, and I think someone put a curse on me, and I'm like, well, and I was listening to spirit. Well, how do I get rid of this? So you're asking spirit how to rid people of these things. So the healing work that I do has all been led by spirit telling me how to remove it or how to move the energy or how to feel a blockage in someone's body and send it into the earth or give it up to the angels or whatever we have to do with it. But yeah, the first time I saw that I was like, what is this? Because I wasn't expecting any of this. It was just a great kind of way to go about it. It just kind of came up.
So when you're doing your readings, do you have your eyes open, closed?
I have my eyes open, but it quickly becomes my third eye. And people say that I look completely different once I start reading. It's like I'm a different person. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I don't notice any of it. But they say that I don't look the same once I start reading. And I've had circumstances where people could start seeing my face change if they're of a high enough frequency. They're like, what's happening? Or they start hearing the ohm. They're like, what is that noise? And I'm like, you hear it too? Like, I never ask somebody if they hear it. If they say they heard it, I'm like, okay. Because those are things you have to start being careful about. When I first started, there would be like issues with the lighting in my house, like the lights would dim, and I would say to someone, like, "Oh, is there something wrong with the electricity?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, never mind," because it was just spirit trying to get my attention. So if I'm driving down the street and I see someone on the side of the road, I don't tell the person I'm with, "Do you see that person?" I wait for them to say it because they might not be there. So it's just like that. For me, it's become very sort of normal. Like I almost think it's abnormal to not be connected, to be asleep, as everyone kind of is here. Everyone's kind of asleep.
What do you think it starts to awaken that in someone? Is it intention? Is it desire to know more, to figure out who they
Yeah, I
are?
think if you have the intention that you would like to know who you are, if you said to the universe before you went to bed, "Show me who I am," they will start to show you who you are. So I think it's important to ask. No one's asking, what they should be asking for. And I know that there's an angelic presence. There's an angel assigned to everyone, and they should be asking that angel for help. And they will see results. They will see something. Their brain might obscure it. I would keep asking because we forget. We'll ask the angel for something, and then it'll happen, and we totally forgot we asked. It just erases it. But I would keep asking. Eventually, you will have signs to say, give me a sign, show me who I am. That will start to open you up right away. But whether you register it or whether your brain, if you're all of the brain, if you're all of mind, it's difficult. You have to start to get out and observe your brain, what it's saying, what it's hiding from you. And that takes some time. But I think anyone could awaken to spirit. That's a choice that you're supposed to make here. Listen, if you are a younger soul, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. You are here playing out a certain role for certain lessons. You may not be able to open to spirit this life. It might take till you're further along in your journey, having more lifetimes behind you to reach that kind of vibrational frequency where you could really connect. Like connecting with the dead, you're raising your spiritual vibration and they're lowering theirs and you're meeting in the middle. So if you can't raise your vibration, it's a little bit tough. Or if you're in mourning, a lot of people are in mourning and they're wondering how come they haven't had a sign. I mean, they've never had a sign from the other side before, and they're expecting that sign. Expectation's problematic. It really is. It just destroys everything generally. It's going to be the greatest party ever. It's never the greatest party ever once you say that. So
And then you wake up drunk with a hangover.
yeah.
It's just like,
Where was
man,
I?
what happened? So you did mention a couple of times that raising your vibration. Can you explain to us how you keep your vibration high?
Well, I'm going to say that I still do the breathing. It worked for me from the beginning. I recommend transformational breathing, belly breathing, more than you think you need to. I don't think it has to be the way that I do it, but focusing on the breath, which is the life force energy, you are breathing in the light of the source, whether you know it or not. So breathing is a great portal, but I would always recommend having more than one portal to spirit. So I would say nature would be another one. And some people could do it from exercise, whatever works to get your vibration high. But look, this is a very low vibrational place oftentimes. And the company you keep and the media that you expose yourself to and the environment you find yourself in, it will drive down your vibration unless you're protecting yourself. If you're going to go to a place like that, you should say to your spirit guides, I want full armor. That way, when you get back home, you're not any lower in vibration. And if you're starting out, that thing where we talked about at night, being a lit up window in the darkness, once you start to raise your vibration, you should see yourself as like an old oil lamp or a dimmer switch and turn your lamp down real low at night so that you're not being fed upon. When you wake up in the morning, you're going to have more psychic energy, a higher vibration, instead of having it diminished all the time. But there are people who are, living around family that will not allow them to ever get their vibration high unless they protect themselves from their own family. So if you're in that situation, it's very difficult to continually keep your vibration high. If you're around someone who's like complaining all the time or negative all the time.
Yeah,
Because
because then it's almost like counterintuitive. You are doing all the work to raise your vibration, and then you are in an
yeah,
environment that is like draining the heck out
yeah,
of everything you
yeah.
worked
There are
for.
people who can drain you. And there are people that we read, that we're fine reading for them, but you can have that one person you read for and it's like, okay, I'm done for the day. I can't do I'm done for the day. That took everything I had. And not because it was difficult to connect, it's just trying to pull them up. You want to help them. So, because if they're nervous, it's really hard to connect with them. And I've read for people who have a full wall up. They're really, they're testing me. They want to see if I can get through their wall. And that's fine. I don't really care. I mean, like whatever. But I think it's a little easier if someone is open and receptive and they're calm, or they'll call me from their car and they're driving 80 miles an hour, and I'm like, well, I'm trying to connect to a lot here. Could you at least pull over? Because I'm trying to connect with so many different things, and you're moving. Okay.
That's hilarious.
I did some home parties where people are like, well, they're all drinking wine. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know that this is the best environment to read in when everyone's drinking. But So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
let's not mix the spirits, one
Yeah, it's a
spirit at a
lot.
time.
But I certainly could not. And that's a vibrational thing too. I mean, I could drink, but if the day before I'm going to do readings, if I have 3 glasses of wine, I can't work the next day because it is a lower vibrational thing generally once you get past a certain amount, you know. So
So nature, the breathing, getting enough sleep, maybe not
yeah,
over consuming certain substances.
yeah. Yeah, I think that that's about it.
Yeah.
And to have a practice. I mean, meditation is a thing to take time to just not think. And we say meditation, and to people, and they're like, "Oh, here we go again with the meditation." It's not so complicated. It is the
Yeah, please describe the
yeah.
kind of meditation that you do on a daily basis that you
Really,
found.
this is just the art of no thought. And I will allow that for women it is much harder than for men because I don't have as much going on up there. I can be quiet, with my mind for longer. I get it. But if you could do like 5 or 10 minutes of no thought, it goes a long way. If you did 5 or 10 minutes of just no thought in the morning, and don't beat yourself up. Like nothing is good when we're beating ourselves up. Like if you try to lose weight and you're like beating yourself up over it, you never get anywhere. Like that's not the way. So if you're just quieting your mind and a thought comes up, don't beat yourself up, let it float by. You do your 5 or 10 minutes and that's it. It doesn't have to be hours and hours of meditation. I just disagree with that. So it's just a matter of a little bit less thought goes a long way in opening up to spirit.
That
Because the
makes
brain
sense.
immediately loves the long road. Say, well, we're going to have a practice. We're going to have to trek through Tibet and visit all kinds of monasteries to become spiritual. When you already are spiritual, you're just blocking it. You're not becoming spiritual. That's a lot of work. You know.
I love that so much. Stop doing so much efforting. Stop it. It's
Yeah.
just be you.
It's really just to just recognize yourself. It's almost too simple. The brain will say, no, it can't be that simple
The
immediately.
mind loves to complicate things. Like it can't be that easily that I can just talk to my spirit guides or to my angels or to
Right.
my loved ones that are across the veil. It can't
Right.
be that easy.
But because if you did open up that door, the mind is not as relevant. It is, I think I know there was a time where we were more connected to spirit than we are now. And that the brain, through eating meat, for thousands and thousands of years, we can't change it now. It's evolution. You're fighting thousands of years of evolution where the brain has become this size and wants to be the center of all things. And it's actually causing a lot of suffering at this point. But it's a tough thing for people to face that's what's happening. Because if you talk to a lot of people, and I've read for thousands of people at this point, their brain is causing them suffering. It's generating all kinds of emotions and disturbance, anxiety, depression, and fear constantly. It's not serving them. And so I always advise everyone to really be an observation of what the brain is saying. You're like, well, how? You just step out and observe the brain. It gets really quiet when you observe it. So it's an interesting part of the work because I started looking over the years of what is the patterns? Why are people suffering this way? Because initially it's like, is this the man for me? Is this the job for me? But it's gotten deeper and deeper over the years into the psychology of people and why people suffer. So that's what the work has become, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, have you found a pattern in doing so many readings over so many years? And it's interesting that you mentioned, fear. Is that what brings us that feeling of disconnection where we can't hear our intuition, where we can't hear what's really good for us?
Because if you connect with the soul is joyful and peaceful all the time. There are not that many tortured souls here. That the soul is actually peaceful and joyful. What's going on? Most people have lived dozens and dozens of lives, or even hundreds of lives. For the soul, it's like a blink of an eye for the soul. The lives are just going by, and the soul is fine with all of it. But the brain is taking exception to that and holding on to things and blowing them out of proportion to keep you from knowing the joyfulness of your soul. It's resistant to joy. So it'll say, okay, let's be depressed. Let's have anxiousness. Everything's going great. Someone has anxiety. Why would they have it? Everything is great. You could point it out, and they're still anxious. Their brain is causing suffering. So it's interesting because it comes up all the time, especially nowadays.
I remember is one of the things that I felt were a side effect of our sessions was that when I left, there was a raising in my vibration just by us having that conversation, by us talking. Is that something that you think it's also your gift that you have the ability to
I think that
momentarily pull people out of the
I
muck?
I do. I pull people out of I call it like getting them out of the ditch, and it is because I work really, I have to work at this. It's not natural for me to have a high vibration. I work at it. I do the breathing every day, get my vibration as high as possible. And I do see myself more of a healer now than reader, even though it's through reading. But everyone has a medicine that they're meant to share. So I'm always encouraging people, what is your medicine to share with the world? And my medicine is through my words will carry my vibration. If you're an artist and you raise your vibration, your painting will carry a vibration that lifts people up. So yeah, I'm so happy to hear that you have that experience. But I think that that's true. People say that to me, that they feel better. And that's really the point, to get them to feel better. But to stay there, it's not just giving somebody a reading, but also to give them tools so that they can get beyond their brain and have a more peaceful, more productive, joyful life.
Exactly, because you wouldn't want someone to rely on you to
And
be
I
at that
don't.
place. It's almost like,
Yeah,
how do I feed these people the tools so that they can do
yeah,
it on their own time?
yeah. And that's why I will teach people the breathing and teach people and give them tools so that they can get beyond that. I don't want them to be dependent on me. For sure not. No.
Exactly. Like learning how to listen. Should I take the job? Should I
Yeah.
date that
Yeah. And
person?
to trust, because some people will call more often. And I'm like, look, you can't call for readings every week. You have to go and live your life and make decisions and trust your own intuition and see what happens, and then come back. But yeah, giving people tools is a big part of the work. We want to help people. That's really the point. So that's why we go back to the beginning. If someone says, well, I want to be a medium or I want to be a psychic. And the answer, the question is why? Why do you want to do that? If you want to serve other people, you want to help souls, then that's why you would do it. But it's not about, impressing people or doing parlor tricks and trying to, that's not what this is. You wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
get away with it for very long. I mean, it's sort of serious. You have to take it seriously. So,
Yeah, there's that sacredness to the
yeah,
work that you
yeah,
need to embody in your
yeah,
everyday and how you show up to your clients and how do you show up to yourself
yeah.
and your family.
And
Yeah.
there's blowback. I mean, there is blowback if you go outside of that or if you misuse that. For sure there is. I've seen it happen to people, and I'm like, okay, there's a good lesson there, that someone had gone outside of respecting the work, um, or done something wrong. You'll pay for it. Karma is an interesting thing. You start to see, if you do this work for a long period of time, that karma is real. It's brutal, but ultimately fair. And nobody's ever getting away with anything here at all. Because people are like, why did they do this to me? Why did they betray me? And I'm like, well, it's not going to end well for them.
I think that's the other thing I always loved about your sessions and the way you work because you're brutally honest. You're like, okay,
Yeah,
well, there's a lesson here. You may not be seeing it yet, but there's something here, and you're not a victim.
right,
There's
right. I know, yeah. Well, that's a decision that everyone would have to make that goes into the work. Are you going to be just a good news person, or are you going to give the bad news? And I just give whatever I get from spirit. I soften it. I do notice my spirit guides are much worse than I am. I mean, they are brutal. I have to soften it up a lot because I could not do it the way they're saying to do it. There's no way. So I'm really softening it up. So
that's hilarious because I can imagine them telling you, tell them this, and you're like, wait.
yeah, the thing to learn too is whether somebody can handle it. And some people you can only give them a spoonful at a time, and other people you could dump the whole bucket over their head and they're ready for it. So it just depends. That takes time to learn that discernment though, as you read from more people, whether they can handle that or not.
one of the questions that I always love asking you towards the end of our readings together is I always ask you, what would spirit like me to know now?
Uh,
Because there are times that we are not aware, we have questions in my mind. I need to know about this job. I need to know about this, whatever. But there's another thing going on in the background that's really important for our soul to recognize. So I've learned to ask you that. And in finishing this podcast today, maybe I should apply the same question. What would spirit like to know for those who are going to listen to this podcast? What would be the united message here for everyone?
Listen, however bad, however bad you think things may be, it's really going to be okay. Whatever you think it is, if it's a disease, a death, a loss of a job, whatever you think, it's really, really going to be okay on the other side of that. Your soul is at peace. Your soul is peaceful and joyful through all of this. Your heart and mind may take exception to that, but it's not the truth. And we don't really see we don't see everything here. Most people, they're seeing a tiny sliver. We see about 3% of what's actually happening here. There's so much more. There are a lot of layers, a lot of reasons why you may be going through the lessons that you're going through. Um, and you won't know them right now, but you will later. You will find out later what this was all about, for sure. Um, but yeah, that's what I get. That's a lot, big collective message. I don't do too much of that, you know.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. How can people find out about you, Anthony?
So you can find me at readingsbyanthony.com. And I'm also Readings by Anthony on Instagram. So those are the places you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Alini. It was great to
Thank
see
you.
you. Thank you so much for having me on today.